Finance can be messy, but don't worry. We clean it up with facts, fun, and maybe a little sarcasm. Welcome to the Financial Sandbox. Let's get into it. Today, my guest is Melissa Croll from Attlee Realty. Melissa and I met a couple of years ago at a car wash owners convention, and we got like quick, fast friends. We met. and you have really a hell of a background, and from real estate to you were working in oil and gas for a long time, went back to real estate, and now a lot of your focus is car wash. Tell us, what was that? How did that journey begin?
Yes. So this is all kind of a funny story. I mean, if you had asked me if I was going to be selling car washes, 11 years ago, I would have thought you were crazy. But here we are. I think I would like to say I've made a name for myself somewhat in this car wash world. But I actually went to school for journalism. I wanted to either be a broadcaster or a writer. And, things never kind of pan out how you decide they're going to when you're younger. So I ended up, after college, I was just really not making the kind of money I wanted to. And by accident, I ran into a girl I went to college with. Her name was Lisa Johnson. And, here I am struggling to make ends meet. And she's like, oh, yeah, I just built a new house, put in a pool. Here's my new car. And I'm like, what are you doing? Because apparently I had figured this out completely wrong. Yes. And she told me real estate. So I immediately went and enrolled in Champion School of Real Estate, started working on my license. And I started out doing residential because that's what she did. And I think a lot of agents do start in the residential world, and it's great exposure. You learn contracts, you learn how to interact with the people, and I wouldn't change it, in any way. Mm-hmm. So we'll fast forward into how I end up in this crazy car wash world. And so I end up moving up north. At the time when I was dealing with Lisa, I was living in downtown Dallas. So I am a Texan. And when I ended up moving north, everybody tends to move to the burbs after a certain point. And so I moved up to the Frisco, Plano type area. But all my clients were still in downtown, uptown Dallas. And so I was driving back and forth. And when you're residential, your whole demeanor is taking care and being on the service side. So I'm having open houses, I'm driving people around, and quite honestly, I got tired of doing it. So I ended up basically saying, I need to change. So I started looking for anything online that was near McKinney and McKinney Brokerages, which was and kind of the north area. And I answered an ad of all things for a lady named Veronica Attlee, hence Attlee Realty. And so she invites me to a Starbucks. I'm like, okay, why not? So I go to the Starbucks. We meet, and if you've ever had a conversation with Veronica, which I know you have.
I have. She's great.
Yes, her energy is just infectious. She's intelligent. And let's be honest, I like to look up to strong women. She is all of that and more. So I got really excited about what she was selling me, that she basically wanted me to assist her in commercial. Now, I had never done any commercial in my life, but I was like, yeah, okay, I'll assist you. And she said, you can keep doing residential. No problem. Hang your license with me and we'll do this thing. So I started assisting her. And at the time, we had been approached by, this is going to date me, but there was a company called Big Man. They were later bought out by NCS, and that we had been asked by them to do site selection, finding dirt basically for car washes. And so I was just kind of following her. I would help her look for land. Well, the next thing you know, our book of business just exceeded like all our expectations. And so it was like, okay, it's time for me to get on the phones and figure this out. So through her mentorship and kind of picking up and learning, from her, I just basically jumped in feet first and kind of sink or swim type of situation. Right. And I will say, you mentioned the oil and gas. A lot of people don't know that I have a background in oil and gas. I also have been a landman, and the way oil and gas work, it's usually like project, like you'll get a project, you'll work it and then it ends. And then you're looking for the next project. So I still actually do pick up projects here and there. So I'm also a mineral buyer. And to be honest, I think I learned so much in the mineral buying space that I applied to the real estate because it taught me how to call, basically cold call. Yeah. Calling mineral owners, hey, can we buy your minerals? And we kind of use that in the real estate world as we started calling car wash owners, hey, do you want to sell? And so that's kind of how that all transpired.
So let's get back to Veronica and
Sure.
you, both women in a space, whether it's minerals, oil and gas, car wash. That is such a male dominated space. Tell me about, how did that work for you, and how do you feel? I mean, women who build, this is a leadership opportunity that probably a lot of people in that space didn't see. If you've been in this over 15 years, right?
Yes. Yes. So we've been selling car washes for 10, but been doing real estate probably around 18 years. So I will say I've had some encounters where the person didn't want to deal with me because I was a woman. And sadly, that still is a thing. And to be honest, it doesn't even bother me. That's not my person. That's not my client. That's okay. But if you ask me, really, I actually use being a woman as an advantage. And I think Veronica does too. There's a sense in real estate of like nurturing, especially if somebody's a first time buyer. I deal with a lot of people who are buying their first car wash. There's a lot of fear in that. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of hand holding, getting through the next steps. You got to find the land, and then they want to know what's next. Okay, we got to make sure that you've got insurance. We got to make sure that, are you going to 1031 exchange and call you? There's a lot of nurturing, and I do use my, a little bit of my feminine energy, and I actually would say in the oil and gas world that I definitely used it to my advantage, because when I told you we were cold calling, and some of these owners, by the time I would call them, I might have been their fifth call of the day. And
right.
So you can imagine I got hung up on. If you don't have thick skin, I don't recommend oil and gas or cold calling car wash owners, because it can be quite daunting. But I think almost because I was a woman and they weren't used to a woman calling them, sometimes they don't hang up the phone just out of being polite. So guess what? Now the conversation started. So yeah, I use it to my advantage in a way.
What's the biggest difference between selling a single family home and selling a car wash? How did you turn that hat around?
Sure. So obviously the biggest difference is you're now buying a business. Most of the washes that I personally sell, and Veronica too, of course, they have the business included. So now we're dealing with profit loss. We're having to show, and many of our buyers are getting SBA loans, whereas in my residential world, it's like everybody's, most people are going conventional or, FHA, and it's a pretty standard process. But we have to actually dive in and understand the numbers so that we can explain it, especially to those newer type groups. There are obviously, there's so many sophisticated buyers at this point that they don't even need us to handhold them. But when I'm referencing that, I'm kind of talking about more my first time car wash owners, because I do work with a ton of them. But I think it was important, like I said earlier, to have that residential and that contract background, because without that, I don't think I would be as effective. I watch some of these new agents come in and they try to go straight into commercial, and, they've never dealt with a title company. They don't fully know the process. And to me, it's just, okay, we're just selling maybe a larger product, there's a little more, with the home, you're just doing regular inspection. Whereas in our world, we're doing, maybe a phase 1, phase 2, there's all kinds of different moving parts. We're transferring credit card machines, and, it's a full on business. We've got employees we've got to deal with. Are we going to fire them, or are we going to keep them? And by the way, we always encourage people to keep them, because, obviously it is hard to find staffing. And so what we like to tell the new buyers is, please, keep the staff. That they're going to only benefit you. They already know how to run that wash. But before, you're not dealing with that. When I'm selling a home, here's the house, here's the here's the fridge. This is what you get, but whenever you're selling a business, you're selling somebody's life work in some cases. So, I think I wanted to talk a little bit about, earlier we were talking about women, and this kind of slipped my mind, but at our company, we also have a mentorship program, and this did stem with Veronica kind of obviously mentoring me. So now I've been doing that for some women. So I wanted to give a shout out to Barbara White and Layla Harvey. They've been going through the mentorship program. They were both residential agents, and I've watched them go through the same process. They knew contracts. They were good with people. They're trustworthy. And those are all really important things. And those are, you teach contracts, but you can't teach that people and they have that. And, I've really watched them be so green in the car wash world. So now in the beginning, they wanted me to be on every phone call with them and go on every, meeting. And now they've just really blossomed, and they're doing their own thing. And, obviously we still are there to help them, but it's incredible to see kind of what Veronica gave me. And then now I'm able to kind of return that to some other ladies in the business. So.
And I've met them, so that I've kind of watched them as they started out.
Yeah.
And they were super excited. And as I've gotten to know them over time, there's a sense of groundedness that they have today that they didn't when I first met them. They were willing and willing to learn everything and excited. So it's great to see that they're really growing. So in what I've noticed and what I've learned in the car wash space is it's families, it's small families. There's a lot of trust.
Yes.
Before they're going to welcome you in. How does that work for you? Because this is a business transaction.
100%.
Right? A lot of people, and when you get to private equity, they're coming in thinking, okay, this is a business deal, boom, boom, boom. But you have to deal with the family.
Yes. And I've actually had sellers tell me they won't sell to private equity. And it's because they're afraid of what's going to happen to their big business, their legacy. I'm dealing with a couple car washes down in South Texas right now. And it's a husband and a wife, and they put their blood, sweat, and tears into these two locations. And, they've spent their life savings and getting them to what they are, and they're profitable businesses now, but they don't want it to go to somebody that doesn't appreciate what they built. So there is still some of that, that family, and that, they do want it to go to somebody who is going to care for it. And that's more on the smaller scale. Now, when we get into M&A and we're talking about packaging deals, that's a whole different ballgame. That's a whole different conversation. When we're talking about this and truly like building that trust with these people that are, jumping into, I had one couple, they had sold a yogurt shop, and they really were interested in car wash. And so they had made a nice amount of money selling their yogurt shop, but they needed that trust, and they needed somebody to kind of, hold their hand to get them to the next step. And so there is value in that. And we see that.
Sounds like there should be a yogurt shop at the car wash while people are waiting.
That's a great idea. Maybe I should tell her, hey, can you do a pop-up at the trade shows when we go to these?
Hey, there you go. Exactly. So that trust and what I've found really working with people is there's a patience that's needed when working with these families, as I did with one of your clients recently, really sitting down with them and talking about the step-by-step process on a 1031 exchange on the sale. Tell me about what's the importance of knowing, what are my options when someone comes in and just said, I'm out, I'm done. How do you get them ready? What's the steps that you take to talk to them about getting their numbers together, their accounting, their finance?
Sure. So a seller. Okay. Yeah. So usually the first thing we're going to do is we are going to ask for their profit loss statement. So the way I tend to price the car washes is I always think about and I'm talking about a one-off situation, maybe not talking about M&A right now. But we'll look at their one or two locations. We'll ask for their profit loss, and we'll run a return on investment report. And what we're looking for is we want it to be able to be SBA qualified. So that's what we're looking for. We have a spreadsheet we run it through, and it has to be like a 1.25 DSCR. And so we've got a whole reasoning behind how we price it, because most of these independent guys are getting SBA. Occasionally we'll get the cash buyer, and hey, that's great and all, but that's not the norm. So we have to prepare for, what is normal and what we are seeing the most of. And that's buyers coming in and trying to utilize the SBA loans to buy these car washes. So we start with P&Ls. I do ask for a survey, because I do obviously want to still market to the larger guys that are probably going to, if they buy it, they're going to remodel it, and put their spin on it because they've already got a model. Really going to evaluate and talk to them. And there is a lot of back and forth, because I have all kinds of conversations where they're like, okay, I'm ready to sell. And then they pause, because then they realize this is what they've been doing for 30 years. What are they going to do now? We definitely have some interesting conversations, but that's kind of part of it, right?
So I'm going to back up here. P&L, we're talking about the profit and loss statement.
Sure.
And you also use another acronym, DSCR. The DSCR is the debt service coverage ratio.
Correct.
And you're talking about 125%. 125% of what?
So we're looking at that EBITDA multiple. So we could do an entire session on ROI reports and kind of how we price out. But just to give a basic model, that's what we're doing, and that's what we're looking at.
Right. So, and the bank wants to know, is this profitable?
Correct.
Also, will the debt service coverage ratio, where they're looking at any downturn in the market to make sure that owner, that property, that business has enough coverage if it slows down.
Correct. Yes, the bank wants to get paid back, as you know. So
exactly,
that is a big part of it. Absolutely.
So in the early 2020s, there was a huge push in the car wash industry, and I think that was fueled by an HBO show, right? Was that
Breaking Bad?
But in the last year, 2 years ago, interest rates started to move, got a little higher.
Yes.
Sellers weren't getting that high multiple that they expected. Where's the market today? We're recording this in 2025.
Yeah.
Where's the market today? And let's talk about those last couple of years. How's it been, and what's happening today?
So to be honest, there's a lot more education, or people are a lot more educated on their decisions now. We've had some obviously great things happen in the car wash, but we've also had some negative publicity, and that affects how people perceive is car wash a good investment. I still believe it's a good investment, and if you're smart with your money, and that's why I say, or smart with your, how you're thinking and what you're spending, car wash is absolutely a great investment. But if you're overpaying, it can bite you in the rear, and we've seen that in a few instances because people overpaid back then. And so, as a broker, one of the hardest, I think, jobs that I deal with is actually talking to the sellers and saying, "Hey, listen, it's not 2021 or 2022 or when we were having these crazy multiples. There was one deal, I couldn't even believe it. It was like a 24 times EBITDA, and I'm like, how on earth? Like,
my gosh,
yeah, just insane. And that was a very one-off situation, but I still couldn't believe that was what it traded at. But I mean, back then there was 12, 15 times, and now we're seeing it kind of come down to, I would say it's really still in that like 7.5, probably 8 to 10 times. Really is kind of 8 to 10 is kind of the sweet spot. And we're talking about express tunnels in that world. It depends on which type of wash you're looking at. And also, I should say, it depends on what market, because what I might be selling a wash for in Dallas, New York would be, could have a completely different multiple. So you got to be educated in where you're buying. You can't just give a blanket, EBITDA multiple for the entire, US. It's just not how it works. And, a smaller city versus a bigger city, obviously an in-bay automatic versus an express. I mean, it's a totally different deal. But we kind of, if you're asking me today, what I would say 8 to 10 times EBITDA is kind of where we're at.
So you brought up so much there that and my brain was going to, what are the different types of washes, right?
Yeah.
The self-serve where I drive in and I wash down my own car, or the drive-through tunnel. What are the different types, and how do you evaluate them when it comes to packaging them up for sale, whether it's a single, a double, or a group of 10 washes that the owner has?
Sure.
What are
So
the
I actually love that there's different types of washes, and the reason is because it creates basically an opportunity for different income and a different investment type of, so you can buy a self-serve wash. I mean, depending on what city you're in, but anywhere from 125,000 in a very small city to, sometimes they're $1,000,000. It just, but a lot of people can afford a self-serve in that range. I think on average they're between 300 to 600,000. So a lot more people can possibly afford a self-serve, get their foot in the door, take advantage of cost segregation and the 100% depreciation, and it could be a self-serve. Then of course we've got the in-bay automatic. So what I always tell people, everybody's been to the gas station that has the car wash, and red light, green light, you pull in, you wash your car and you pull right out.
Right.
And there is I'm sure you've seen them. A lot of my self-serve buyers are buying those self-serves and adding an in-bay automatic. And you can add an incredible amount of income to a wash if it's obviously in a good location, for a decent return. So, and then of course the express tunnel is what's got, car wash just so popular with the PE groups. It was like, okay, we're going to have minimal staffing and we're going to all just turn this huge profit. But what has to be remembered is that it is still a customer driven, you have to have a good experience. So even though you may have 20, 30 washes, whatever, if the customer's not having a good experience, that's still very, very important. And then of course, my favorite is the full service. Drop your keys, go sit in the lobby, and then
have a coffee, have a yogurt, right?
Yes. They've replayed the towel. And then it's time for me to pick up my car, and I didn't have to lift a finger.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And the industry has changed so much, right? Because it's now very automated. I have a monthly membership on
Sure.
mine, and it's great because sometimes I'm near where my car will get washed, and I may just drive through because it takes 15 minutes.
Sure.
And for me to get in and out and them to dry off my car and leave. What do you see as the next steps?
Yeah,
how do you see AI?
Well, so I think that there's been a different app added, every week. I'm exaggerating, but I mean, there's so many new apps. But it's great because, especially for some of these larger groups that own, multiple car washes, they can track how's their car wash doing in New York, how's their car wash doing in Tennessee, all from their phone. I mean, it's incredible. And they can sync it all together. They can look at their payroll. These apps do everything. It's incredible. So technology is definitely changing the world of car wash. Membership has definitely driven the business, creating those residuals. And so in Texas, a lot of people may or may not know this, but we get freezes. Everybody always thinks Texas is so hot. Well, you may not have been here in February when we got a freeze and we're all terrified to drive. But you have to have something to help you sustain those rainy days, those freezes, those different things. So membership is kind of allowed, these different areas to kind of sustain it. But of course, you have to sell the memberships, of course, for that to work. So there still is that customer aspect that I was talking about. So in the express tunnel, I think one of the most important people is that person that's standing there at that POS, greeting people and trying to sell memberships. Because yes, I can go up there and try to figure it out myself, but am I going to sell myself a membership? I probably won't as a customer. And so I think that person is really, really important, especially in a new business, or meaning that they just opened their store. I think that person is key. And if you were going to ask me, I'd say always keep that person. Right. It's nice to have that friendly hello. Oh, let me do that for you. Let me take your credit card. And, all I did was, okay, sure. And then they tell me some great deal. And,
right. Right. So when someone calls you up and says, "Hey, Melissa, I think I'd like to buy my first wash," what do you tell them? What do you talk to them about when they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and thinking this is the industry for me?
Yeah, so I always tell them, let's get some education, because a lot of times they don't know which car wash they want. They don't even realize that there are different ones. And so I always tell them, I'm going to do a plug, but go to carwashtraders.com. That's our website. We have, there you go. We have lots of resources for first-time car wash owners and sellers, both. We have sections where they can go and read and understand. We explain the difference in car washes. So they could start there. So we've got to figure out what type of wash they want. How much time are they going to be able to spend? Obviously, self-serve is going to be a lot more hands-off than, say, obviously a full serve or even an express tunnel.
Right.
And so we've got to have those conversations. I have people call me all the time. Hey, listen, I live in California, but I'd like to buy a car wash in California. Okay, well, I mean, they live in California.
That's a tough market.
Yeah,
That's
trying to, buy one here. And so I say, well, we're going to have somebody you trust to help you run it, unless we buy something that's just 100% turnkey. So I have to figure out, how much involvement that they plan on, being, and especially in the self-serve world, it's so cash heavy. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to buy this spray and wash. Why would I need to ever be there? Well, who's going to go collect all that cash in those buckets of quarters, So
who's going to service the money?
Yes. And then, of course, there's daily maintenance, which you can hire somebody to do that. That's an easy fix. But, we have to basically evaluate, how much time and effort they want to really put into the business. And then we kind of go from there.
So you're in Dallas. Do you sell across the country? Is there a region that you, maybe you or your team, like real estate, you're licensed in Texas, you sell in Texas, but I know that you sell all over the country. And I noticed also that there was a couple of self-storage portfolios that you've been marketing. So it looks to me like you're branching out a bit. Yeah.
So, we actually partnered up with a group called Miracle Car Wash Advisory. I'd say we've been with them about 2.5, 3 years now. And that was a great move for our company, because when we did that, we launched national. So we're in almost every state at this point. So there's really not much that we can't do. So that's been a blessing. Now, if you ask me my expertise, I'm all over Texas because I'm from here. I live here. This is my main market, but we can sell anywhere because we've got the team, to basically, work in the other states. So, there's nothing that we couldn't probably help, a potential buyer or seller with. So because of that. So.
And so that's your partner, Tom, correct?
Yes. Tom's Kaufman. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to have you both on so that I can get you bouncing things off each other. So I can
that'd be great.
About this partnership and how it's going.
Yeah, we'd love that.
So we on the podcast here I always ask kind of the boxer briefs question, right? So my boxers or briefs question for you is, if you had to look at the newspaper industry where you started and where your heart was when you were in college and where you are today, how do they relate?
So, I mean, obviously, this is definitely not where I thought my path would go, but would I change anything? No. I mean, I actually love what I'm doing. And it's funny because now people actually understand it. When I first started telling people I was selling car washes, they would look at me like I had, 9 heads, like, what is she talking about? But then they started getting car washed on, the corner here, and then there's one being built there, and they're like, oh, I get it. So I will have to say, when we got into the car washing, it was really one of those like right place, right time. One of those things where you got to seize that moment. And I feel like we've tried to do that the best we can. When it started out, it was really just Veronica and I. And now we have, a massive team, and it's just incredible to think about what we were when we started. I met her at the Starbucks, and then my first 2 weeks, we didn't even have an office. I worked at her house. And here we are, we've got multiple offices in multiple states, and, this great team, and the people on our team are incredible. I had the luxury of, and you were there, going to New Jersey, the Atlantic City show recently, with a couple of guys that I hadn't really even got to know that well, because one's in Florida, one's in Ontario. And I'm like talking with them and picking their brains. And I'm just like, this is incredible what we are, what we built, and these people, and they're all just as passionate as Veronica and I were back, 10 years ago.
Sure.
So it's great.
So the newspaper industry and television news looks like they really missed out on someone who can be passionate.
Well, I appreciate that. I do sometimes wonder what would my life have been if I had pursued that. But I'm very happy where I am, and I work with people I love. I have to say, the Attlees, one of the things I think that's led to the success of our company, and even me personally, has been surrounding yourself by people that are goal oriented, and people that are smart, people that are smarter than me, people that are, trustworthy and have good morals. And so I followed Veronica and Tim Attlee. Her husband actually owns a construction company that builds car washes. So, it's just being around those kind of people. If I have a question about development, I can go to him. If I have a question about real estate that I need more help with, Veronica, and just, I think it's incredible, where we've come and where we are now. But so every now and then I do get a glimpse of what would it be like if I had went down that broadcast journalism path. But, I think life worked out,
Sounds that way. It does. So, all right. So here's my question for the day. I'm a big cartoon person. And so if you had to pick a cartoon character that describes you, who would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. Really putting me on the spot.
I am.
Oh, I don't know her name, but there is there was a show called Tiny Toons. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
There was a girl to be like, "I love you," and kiss you and hug you, because I do love my pets. So I have 2 little dogs, so that's me.
I'm the one to hug her and kiss her and squeeze her into itty bitty pieces. Nice to meet you.
That's you to a T. Well, folks, that's a wrap. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more raw, real financial talk in the Sandbox. Melissa, it's been a pleasure having you on. You were a little nervous at first when we were chatting about this, but you were a trooper, and it's been great having you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.